Look at a problem that's written in words. For problem 5, we have a plane flies 1,260 miles in 3 hours. How far will it fly in 5 hours? Now, there's a lot of ways to solve this problem, but we're going to solve it using a proportion. So first I'm going to say this. Let's let x equal the thing that's asked for in the problem, which is the number of miles it will fly in 5 hours. So miles flown in 5 hours. Now I'm going to set up a proportion this way. The number of miles it flies in 5 hours is to 5 hours as 1,260 miles is to 3 hours. So I have miles over hours and miles over hours. I just want to make sure that I have the same ratio of units on one side and on the other side. Then I can really just forget about the units. Here I have a proportion now. I'll multiply x times 3 and get 3x. And then I'll multiply 5 times 1,260. Now, I divide both sides by 3, and I end up with x is equal to 2,100 or 2,100 miles. Now, I did this on a calculator. I multiplied 5 times 1,260 and divided by 3. That gave me the 2,100 miles for this. So I set up the proportion this way. I use the means extremes property to get an equation. I solve that equation, and that will give me the result. Now, does that make sense? 2,100 miles in 5 hours if I fly 1,260 miles in 3 hours? Yeah, it seems to make a reasonable amount of sense. Let's look at our next problem that involves a map. Problem 6 says the scale on a map indicates that 1 inch corresponds to an actual distance of 95 miles. Suppose that two cities are 4.5 inches apart on the map. What's the actual distance between the two cities in real life? Well, let's let x be equal to that distance, and this is what we'll have. X is to 4.5, x miles is to 4.5 inches on the map, as 95 miles is to 1 inch on the map. So here I have miles to inches, miles to inches. That gives me a proportion that describes the situation. I'm going to use my means extremes property to multiply x times 1. Let me do it over here. So this implies that x times 1 is x is equal to 4.5 times 95. So 95 times 4.5. And if I do that multiplication, I end up with, let's see, 427. Is that right? 427, yes, 0.5 miles. So even reading maps, you can solve some map reading problems using proportions. In this case, I have a map in which 1 inch corresponds to 95 miles. I look on the map and I see that two cities are 4.5 inches apart, and what I want to know is how far apart are they in real life? Well, I set up this proportion. The number of miles they are apart is to 4.5 inches, as 95 miles is to 1 inch. Then I simply solve that proportion and I get 427.5 miles for the distance between those two cities. So there's a look at proportions and solving proportions.